rinsing. I don't know.
Well, it's not a cliche.
It's not a cliche. It is. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Writers Drinking Coffee. This is a podcast based on writers sitting around drinking coffee or wine, talking about writing, publishing, and the whole creative process. We will not censor ourselves, so it's going to be PG-13. Your hosts today are Chaz Brinchley, John Schmidt. Your host today... Your host, blah, blah, blah.
Your hosts today are Jeannie Warner, Chaz Brinchley, John Schmidt. Brinchley.
See? It's harder than you think.
It's harder than you think. And Dave Welsh. That's all of us. Moving on.
Totally hard. This is episode 25, Death by Cliche.
The silver episode.
Dun, dun,
silver
dun.
away.
This is our silver anniversary. This is our 25th show.
Woohoo!
For anybody who's out there saying to himself, well, I don't want to watch it until I can binge watch it or binge listen in an afternoon. Today is your afternoon.
Dun, dun, dun.
Coincidentally, this is actually something that I dragged everyone to the table saying, I want to talk about writing cliches.
No, you want to talk about cliches in writing, not about writing cliches.
Well, kind of both, really. Can hardly be one without the other. All right, because this came up recently, and not picking on anybody here, but there are a lot of books that I have found written about girls of a certain age, and I wanted to kind of stand up on a soapbox for a little bit here and talk about it. Because there's words that we associate with women, not men. And then there's words that you associate with men, not women. And I think we might almost be grown up in the world to let some of that go a little bit. I mean, talk about crazy, but
it's crazy.
I will never have a heart-shaped face. Girls with heart-shaped faces. You never hear boys with heart-shaped faces, and yet All in Korea has this whole plastic surgery to give little, boys with heart-shaped faces.
I did not know that.
They did. You got to Google. I mean, this is freaky. Go out and Google Korean plastic surgery. It's huge. You have plastic surgery done to your kids to give them a certain face.
Well, this is also a country that has a fan phobia, though, so...
Yes.
Fan phobia?
Yes.
You mean the kind of fan you often put in your face?
Electric fan.
Really?
Yep.
Tell us a story, Dave.
Did I derail your kind of... Sorry.
No, it's fascinating because this is...
What we're doing.
There is a Korean urban legend or superstition about electric fans that they will suck all the air out of the room, so sometimes they don't use them. You can Google it. There you are.
And the Google you want to look up is the Korean fan death. And the first article is my electric fan going to kill me in my sleep? What a cliche.
But because this had come up recently, so I went out to our good old Facebook feed and I said, all right, describe yourself in other gendered terms.
Yes, you did. I saw that.
And I started off and I led the way and said, I am a square-jawed, ruggedly handsome woman.
It's totally true, people.
Which is... a cliche when applied to men, of course.
Well, it is.
Just like your heart-shaped face.
But I didn't know that I had a square-jawed face until Brian Kissinger, who writes these... I hope I didn't mispronounce his name, but
it's probably Kissinger.
He does these beautiful cartoons, and he was at the Labyrinth of Jareth, and he drew a cartoon of me. That was the first time anybody had ever cartooned my face, and there it was. A square jaw. And it's like, is that a square jaw? It's like, yes, you have a very square jaw.
That's awesome.
Well,
where were you?
The Labyrinth of Jareth party
I do
down
not know
in.
what that means.
Well, we'll put a link in there.
Yeah,
It's this big to-do down. You go down to Hollywood, and it's as if remember the ball from Labyrinth with David Bowie, and it's such a sad. And everybody puts on costumes, and they go, and there's 3 different kinds of bands and music around, and there's dancing and theater and drama and amazing costumes because it's Hollywood, and it's just the best time.
Fun is had.
And Brian was there drawing cartoons and not charging nearly enough until I told him he should double his prices. Hope you did there. So I got the last one at 20 and said I would pay 50 for this. But I have a square jaw.
Yes, you do.
And there's a lot of women with cleft chins, but why do we never talk about the cleft chins?
That's right. It's only Kirk Douglas who has a cleft.
Only Kirk Douglas in the entire, whereas...
He has a dimple in his chin. I don't think it's really cleft, is it?
Now, men and women can both have dimples, but why can't...
Right.
Yeah. See what I mean? This is stressing. How do you describe a woman?
There is very much gendered language and gendered description, and particularly gendered cliches.
Yeah, and my friend Amy described herself as a brusque, gravel-voiced doctor. That's beautiful. Well,
Yes.
animal doctor.
Does not completely describe her, though. We all contain multitudes, after all.
Well, I have a friend, Garowin, that I describe as having a voice like whiskey and sex. And, I don't see that. And that's what I mean, is you got to dig a little deeper. I'm just saying that instead of saying that's, button this or that, I'm a little bulbous. My nose is a little bulbous. If somebody described it as I have a ski jump nose, and I do. Mm-hmm. And it's okay. Our heroes and heroines don't have to be perfect. Why don't we just give it something that's descriptive in any way, and people will understand that?
But you're making a different point. It's not that the heroes and heroines have to be different. It is that the idiom of the language, or the idiots of the cliche, instantly, if you say heart-shaped, everyone expects the next word to be girl, not woman. If you say haggard, it's going to be old or someone who's been at sea, or Merle. But that's a different story, and you guys got to save me because I'm flying.
I don't know. I feel like, I've seen a few women that are toting around 7 children that look mighty darn haggard. And a little bit fed up. But
witches are either stunningly beautiful or incredibly ugly, except for, Ursula Vernon does not write cliches.
Oh, thank you, Ursula. We love you.
We love you. But anyway, cliches.
I had been appreciating through romance novels recently that had started saying it's okay for middle-aged, slightly heavy-set women to have romances.
Good Lord.
I know, right? This was... I had to describe it to somebody once. I'm like, you may not believe this, but I have slept with a lot of people, and I am not skinny. I've been a downright tart in my day. And here's the funny thing. Guys are not only attracted to really skinny women. Sound off, man.
I will read you poetry if you just request it. And slightly larger middle-aged women are sort of in the ballpark. Sort of.
To address the middle-age thing, not necessarily weight or appearance, but I think that as the population has aged, it has kind of dragged all that. It is, in its attempt to remain clawingly backwards towards its youth, it has kind of dragged the rest of the population toward it. So in other words, the assumed age of sexual desirability has gone up as our population has aged.
Yeah, but that...
Maybe it's not 60 now, but... it used to be the early 20s was the thing, and now you see 40-year-old women who are considered desirable.
That's true. I can think of a few of them just off the top.
I would say Helen Mirren, but she's what, 70?
She's an outlier.
Yeah.
No. I say that Sophia Loren set the bar and will never let it go. Neither will Anne Bancroft. There's just certain... Audrey Hepburn.
Talking statistics here, people. You're citing anecdotal evidence here.
I know, but I think it's more dragging up. But then if you have authors describing like females that are heroines, you were just discussing the other day, I was saying I keep running into 17-year-old girls. Chaz, why do you guys write about 17-year-old heroines? Why 17?
Because they want to fuck them.
Because they want to fuck them, because they are a year older than the minimum allowed, generally, which is more or less 16.
Is this Meatloaf? She was barely 17 and she was barely dressed.
That is where Meatloaf got it. It is that feeling. They are older than the minimum, and not yet at the actual point of adulthood, which is generally taken to be 18, except apparently in America where alcohol is concerned. I'm sorry, I have to drop that in.
No apologies needed.
Hey, I was allowed to drink in Colorado at 18. Of course, I at 16 very carefully looked up the law and said, 16 is the age of legal consent in Colorado. Woohoo!
But they are peripheral but not actually illegal.
Yeah.
Which is a thing. I still maintain there is something more inherently attractive about odd numbers than even numbers. 17. I mean, this is. I can see this in my own work, and it's possibly an aspect of my own laziness. I'm much more inclined to write about 17-year-olds or 19-year-olds than I am 18-year-olds.
Does that include for boys?
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
I would also hold, though, that 17-year-old boys and 17-year-old girls are at very different psychosexual emotional
course.
phases.
Yes, absolutely they are.
And here's one that I wanted to throw out here, and it's going to hurt a bunch of guys listening probably. Girls start having periods as young as 9.
These days, yes.
Yeah. Now, and they still were as young as 12, I mean, hundreds of years ago. So this has been, it's as early as 9 now, but that's only crept down.
Yeah.
Girls are forced to maturity faster than boys.
They mature emotionally faster as well.
Yeah,
Pretty well documented.
So this is where I've been having a challenge of the infantilization.
Yes.
And the infantilization of the 17-year-old girl.
Yes.
Bugs me.
I'm not at all surprised.
I mean, that was another thing that I sort of, when I was, reading, I had to stop, and I went again to my trusty, I know hundreds and hundreds of women on Facebook. I want to ask this question. I'm like, so let's discuss crying. Do people write that women characters cry more than men, and why? Because I've been a manager of engineers, and I came home and said, what the fuck is it with engineers crying on me? They all cry.
You have a square jaw.
This square jaw was made to be cried near.
Your honey-colored skin combined with your square jaw.
You're talking about software engineers. Software engineering reeks of despair.
But the cliche is that girls cry and boys don't cry, right?
Yes, girls hold themselves on their bed and sob heartbreakingly.
But men weep.
Reluctantly,
they weep there. Because I want you to know that I think every single human being listening to this has, at one time or another, gotten teary with the frustration of wanting to choke the living shit out of somebody who deserved it. Mm-hmm. Have you ever just been? Oh, all the hands went up in the room. Well, that's angry, frustrated crying. I want to choke you, and it's not allowed.
We have a bunch of sword artists and martial artists here of various kinds, and one of the instant lessons is, at some point you're going to cry. You're either going to be in pain, or you're going to be really frustrated, or you're going to be really joyful, or you're just going to hit some weird emotional state and you're going to cry. Be ready for it. Because if you're not ready for it, it's weird. But once you realize that, and get out of the sword way and get your protective gear off, because cleaning snot out of it sucks.
Oh, yeah. Well, I fenced 30-odd years, and then I did some heavy weapons, and then I played a lot of hockey, and I can tell you that the only people who have never cried in their helmet are liars.
Exactly. Now, vomiting in helmet is different. And
vomiting is different and less cliche, but...
Going back to the cliches, you've hit, I won't say the myth just because I like saying the myth.
Say it. I love the way you say it.
Not the myth.
Is that a cliche?
Too recent.
No.
And it is actually attributing that the past had this, when really I think it's Victorian and later, although, me calling something Victorian is weird. The presumption that females are innocent and white canvases and sugar and spice, and boys are rough and tumble and almost men.
Snips and snails and puppy dog tails,
Which
I think.
is ridiculous.
Wait,
these are the two cliches we've talked about in the last...
This is like that really horrific article I just saw about some, I presume he was a musician type person that was wanted to test and find out if his daughter was a virgin or not.
Every year he takes her to her gynae and sits in while she's examined.
Sits in?
Sits in. He is there.
Oh my God.
Yes.
I don't know. All I can think of is,
initials, and
does he have a son? Does he take his son in and have a proctologist check his asshole for virginity?
Well, it's not the same.
How?
Women have a hymen. That's what you're checking. And you can't let her ride a horse, a bicycle, a motorcycle, or do any gymnastics then.
Exactly. It's medically ridiculous to try and assert virginity by means of intact hymen. It's just nonsense.
Yeah.
Yes, but political. It plays into a certain subset of innocent young women who have no clue because nobody's told them. And the cliched construct of virginity. I just had to say cliched.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know, hurts a little bit my own way to see that. But it's creepy, and the virginity of boys doesn't seem to matter. And if we say when people are writing about these different things, John Cougar Mellencamp hold on to 16 as long as you can. Jack and Diane were having sex.
I have no idea who Jack.
No, let me take off. Oh my God.
Here's a little ditty about Jack and Diane, two American kids growing up in the heartland.
Yeah, the best that they can.
I'm sorry, this is
Jackie's going to be a football star.
Don't worry.
And
Diane,
It's one of the worst
debutante in the
popular
back seat
American
of Jackie's
songs.
car.
It's got to be in the bottom 10.
okay.
Are you kidding? It always gets the whole locker room.
He wrote it in an hour on the back of an envelope, supposedly,
Certainly.
and it has all the earmarks of being quickly written. And
But it's funny if you say this is a song of the heartland of America that's so worried about their daughter's virginity, at the same time they're singing about how she's trying best to get laid at 16 because every girl I knew was trying her best to get laid at 16. Sorry, dads of the world out there, you don't get to pick. And what happens if she does? Do you throw her out of the house? Do you disown her? What do you do?
according to the Old Testament,
Rock on.
have her stoned to death or some damn thing. I can't remember.
All right, so I just want to say right now we'll set up GoFundMe for U-Hauls to get you the hell out of your parents' houses because that's creepy as fuck. But some of it is sexual attractiveness of how people describe. We were just also thinking skin. Mm-hmm. When a character in a book is interested in another character, they describe them with food.
That is, it's not just sexual interest. The classic complaint of all my friends of colour is that they're only ever described in terms of food. You know, she was caramel coloured. His skin was the colour of cinnamon.
I'm sorry. Peaches and cream.
Peaches and cream.
Girls have been peaches and cream for hundreds of years,
Milky
so we got it here. Milky Way. Mr. Wednesday from American Gods. Do you remember him talking about women's breasts as large, round, blue-veined cheeses?
I do not, but I'm sure that he did.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying it's not specifically for colored. I just want to make them aware. Like I have olive oil colored skin. I think I was deciding it was an olive oil.
Funny.
I would not use an olive oil of that colour, Jeannie.
No, olive oil is translucent. You're not
It's a
translucent.
little green. A little green.
Good olive oil is generally
in here.
green.
Yeah. Well, mine
You
is.
said there was something odd about you.
Okay, it was olive oil mixed with honey then. So I'm a honey colored skin.
Yes, you are.
And I've heard that. I've heard honey and peaches and cream.
Yeah,
and,
no, totally.
And when they go, it's alabaster just describes something that's beautiful, but you're never going to touch it.
'Cause
So
you can't eat it.
alabaster means you can't eat it. They're never getting laid in this story.
Yeah.
So it's inverse finished coffee.
Yeah.
Jeannie told me once that in any movie,
In any Finnish movie, Finnish cinema.
movie, if they are invited or they have coffee in the next scene, they will be having sex.
Because it's we should have coffee sometime. The very next scene, they're screwing like rabbits. So that's how I know Finnish coffee means.
I have one counterexample that unfortunately, when I looked at it again, proves your point.
Did it?
Oh yeah,
You were trying to prove me wrong, and you proved me right.
Get to having the coffee, so they never get to have the sex. But he invites her out to have coffee, and she says she loves coffee, would love to have coffee with him, and also maybe a bun. And moving on.
Well, there, if it's buns, I tell you, woo!
And then heavy trip. Anyway, moving on.
But a lot of that is, when I'm going back to how we describe races and genders and all of this thing, there is a lot of laziness in it. And it's made me go back and re-examine things like, I loved Ben Aronovich's Rivers of London for turning that on the male gaze, the male white heterosexual gaze on its side. Because the first time he said these two white guys walked into the bar, it just went, what?
Yes. But that is absolutely the London experience. I don't think I've ever been in a more multiculturally diverse city.
Except for maybe Sunnyvale.
No. You are...
Well, it depends on where I am in Sunnyvale, but there's been a lot of places where it's like, oh, look, the white guy.
Sunnyvale is geek.
Okay.
You know, Sunnyvale is not culturally diverse. I don't know where you've been in Sunnyvale, but...
Maybe it's just I walk into rooms all the time and there's like no white guys in it. So
we're racially diverse.
Yeah.
But we're tech racially diverse. If you want culturally diverse.
Have you ever been to Toronto, Chaz?
I have been to Toronto.
Yeah.
I had a lovely time in Toronto. I went for a walk. I was staying in this little hotel between the red light district and the gay village.
Queen Street.
And I went for a walk at about sort of 3 o'clock in the morning because jet lag, hello. And I thought, oh, this is nicely edgy. I like this. Until I realised that all those little groups of people huddling on street corners were only waiting for the lights to change so they could cross the road legally, although there was no traffic at all.
Canadians are very polite and law-abiding.
Yes, they are.
It's amazing.
Well, I was more interested in your views on the diversity of the city, but
tragically, I was there for a mystery writers conference in the early 1990s, which was a very white community at the time.
Just walking around the city, I think the first time I went to Toronto was in the early 1990s, and I think it's probably the most diverse city I'd ever been to at the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But then you are from Iowa.
Yes, it's true. I do not deny that.
Is there more diversity in mystery and thriller writing now than there used to be?
There is.
Okay.
So.
That's an interesting thing because there's definitely more in romance. Yeah. There's definitely more in science fiction. There's definitely more in comics, and there's what the heck, I can rant. There's a lot of idiots trying to push back against it because they're uncomfortable with the potential of change when you have a choice whether you buy or read a book. Nobody is forcing you to read diverse things. On the other hand, there's some wonderful stuff. The fact that Ursula Vernon has a character who is a they-them, and I don't know if it's NB or... because it just never comes up in the story.
You should translate NB for the benefit of our listeners who are
non-binary. Thank you. Good point. I don't know
what is widely accepted, what is known.
I don't actually know if the character's NB. It does not matter.
Now that's a good point because the fact that it doesn't matter is interesting because the standard seems to have always been that you don't really know. You can't really form a picture in your mind of the character unless you know whether it's male or female or what it looks like. Or it's a lot like when you're making small talk with somebody, the first thing you want to know is what they do for a living because that kind of defines them at that level of
surface level interaction.
Yeah. And the surface level interaction in reading a book is, can I draw a mental picture of them? And if you give them a non-binary description, they're at sea.
It is also. It's not just in books. It is our human normality. We see a figure walking towards us. We expect to be able to tell if it's man or woman, and we don't generally think of.
Oh no, I don't know. I was down in Brisbane once, and we were sitting up, and we were trying to play the male or female, and I was with a friend who was down there who knew everybody because his girl was a dancer.
Sure.
And so he was telling us, Dave and I were sitting there guessing, and he was like, nope, yep. And so, because that was why I wrote The Rising Sun as a story of I never identified the protagonist, the narrator, as male or female because it didn't matter.
My point is that it matters to the listener, and they're going to be on. You might even use this to good effect in your story, but they're going to wonder, and they're going to be on edge until they find out. And if they never find out, that is a salient point of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it a salient point of the story? And I think it keeps coming down to are we over-sexualized then? I presume that we're just going to go with that. And
I'm not convinced it's just gender, but that's a prime example.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. My story Live at Marley's that I read for this very podcast a few episodes ago, we'll put a link in.
You can buy a t-shirt.
You can buy a t-shirt. I have a t-shirt of a story. It's delightful. Thanks, Jazz. The narrative protagonist of that story is neither named nor gendered. And I did
It's not the devil? I presumed it was the devil.
Of course you did. People bring their own presumptions, but it was interesting because it was translated into Spanish for the Mexican market, and it was something I had to talk with them about because they didn't have an option for not establishing gender.
Right.
So in fact, they just went with female, whereas my
See, now
notion
I'm
of it
curious.
had always been male. But hey,
We've got to talk to somebody multicultural to
Yes.
find out how they
Yes.
are talking about this in other languages.
yes.
So if you're out there and you want on this, we want you to come and be a star on this.
Yes,
We can talk
we need
about this.
translators.
Yeah,
And
In Romance languages or other gendered languages.
gendered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or indeed non-gendered language. I was in Taipei the first time, and I was walking around the streets with this young woman who she was pretty much as well educated as you get. She had studied English all her life. She was fresh out of university. She was working as an interpreter, and every now and then I would stop because there would be a plaque in Chinese characters on the wall saying something interesting, potentially interesting, and I'd ask her what it said. And there were two things about that. Sometimes she just couldn't tell me because you can't, if you don't know a character, you can't work it out just by looking at it. If your vocabulary is 40,000 characters, then there's 20,000 characters you don't know, and something like that.
I lose words all the time. I respect that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the other thing was that she would occasionally make absolutely basic gender mistakes between he and she because the Chinese doesn't differentiate. It's weirdly non-gendered for such a gendered culture.
Interesting. Yeah. That would be because of the, how you describe things by sexual attractiveness. This was a little bit how Kate Elliott said somebody said she was advancing the homosexual agenda because she had a female character that looked at a man like a delicious piece of meat. And
this is the homosexual agenda.
Yes, this is the homosexual because
she did not clearly delineate that the protagonist was female.
Oh, okay, I get you. Yeah.
Well, she even did. No, this was one where she did. And she's like, but it was how she described it. She described it in such a way that a guy got a little turned on and then bothered by the fact that he was turned on at this description of a
Are you
guy.
describing what happens in the omniscient press?
Yes.
Okay, I'm looking it up.
Okay.
We don't have time for that.
But that's what I was,
It
saying
is
in
a
terms
food
of the
metaphor,
how we,
though, you'll notice.
the food metaphor, the age metaphor. We were talking about crying and how women cry was how I wanted to say.
You wanted to
and
talk
the,
about
and the
sobbing,
language
didn't you?
and the sobbing. And so I went out and it was funny because there were guys that sounded off as like, oh yeah, I totally sob.
Right, okay.
Do we write in that men sob in books? Why is it? It's very
no.
gendered language.
But I think it's sufficiently gendered that most men would not want to admit that they sobbed.
Yeah.
I'm willing to confess that I cried.
Yeah,
but
I cried my eyes out.
So sobbing is more.
So do you think we have ugly cry now means
Yeah,
sobbing?
exactly. That's exactly what
I totally ugly cried all over it, man.
Yeah.
Because somebody else was saying sobbing in words like, I don't like you, she sobbed.
Yeah.
Would have to come on, I don't like, I mean, really?
Yes. But that shifts us into that whole dialogue delineator conversation-y thing, which is
I
probably...
like your observation about ugly cry. That is sexist at its core.
Is
You
it?
think?
Oh, it could be, but everybody ugly cries.
Okay,
So,
but
I rather like it.
Yeah.
Because it's new. It's new to me.
yeah, well, I think it's new as in kind of internet.
Yeah, that's exactly my point, yes. And it's a way to talk... You see, I don't think it's gendered.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think it's been around long enough to be gendered. If we leave it there long enough, then undoubtedly it will get pushed onto the women and...
Well, maybe it's because ugly is gendered.
well,
It's loaded.
there's also, we don't talk about men crying at all. So naturally crying has a slant towards the feminine just because,
Well, okay.
men shed a tear. Like at the end of Tombstone, they talked about carrying out, the real life body of Wyatt Earp and how Tom Mix, a famous movie star, was one of the characters. And they say at the end, Tom Mix wept.
Okay.
So clearly men weep, and it's okay because, and it was this dramatic thing that this iconic male, rugged, square-jawed, ruggedly handsome guy.
Yeah, but you're putting that on him, though. It's not him admitting that he wept. It's you saying, well, he wept, therefore. And the reason it's effective is because men don't weep.
Well, it was, but it would have never occurred to them. This is what I'm pausing to say. Tom Mix sobbed.
Okay.
even if
I
you
think
did.
that's
Right.
probably true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm just going to say that sobbing has a certain lack of control associated
Totally.
with it.
Right. Yes.
And the whole thing is, and when I went out and asked friends and I said, where do you sob? So I'm just going to give this clue to everybody out there. The results of our unscientific poll, women sob into their pillows.
Certainly.
Women sob in the shower where nobody can see or hear us.
Okay.
And there was the few collapsing and sobbing was you do it once under extreme dramatic circumstances and not in public. It's still, there's an aura of private to that loss of control. Anything else is you hold it together and you get home and you sob in private.
Sure.
Because sobbing is a very vulnerable state. You are no longer in control. And so public, what is public is an interesting thing. We all cry. Anyone cries in the bathroom? We all cried in the bathroom, whether or not they're staring at me, but you've all cried.
We're not allowed to admit it. Go through a company going through multiple layoffs.
Yeah.
Go sit in the bathroom and listen to the software engineers cry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the hardware engineers cry.
Yeah, well, Dave's already told us that it's because, engineers in general they're sensitive, emotional souls.
No, I did not say that. You're putting words in my mouth again.
That's probably what you said.
No.
Can I throw a different cliche curve at this?
Yeah.
Is everyone here aware of the Bulwer-Lytton fiction contest?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
It was a dark and stormy night.
The captain was standing on the... Oh, wait, that's... Snoopy.
I have been shown around Knaresborough, which was Bulwer-Lytton's family home,
Oh, yeah.
by his great whatever grandson, who paused in the hallway and gestured at the stairs and says, "That is where Charles Dickens performed for us." It was just gorgeous. The house used to be lovely, and Bulwer-Lytton rendered it horrible. Because he thrived in the Victorian era. And he was wholly Victorian Gothic in manner and style. Have you read his books? But also architecture. So
But also architecture.
he has all these. It was a perfectly lovely Georgian house, and now it has gargoyles and turrets, and it's horrible.
Oh.
I think I would love it. I'm going to have to go
I
look
think
at
we would all
pictures.
love it. We need
I'm going to go
see
find
it.
pictures and I'll post them. 'Cause
I'm
I reserve judgment.
I am going to read the Grand Panjandrum's special award, even if I can't pronounce it.
Excellent.
It's a horrible pun. So I've been warned. Bulwer-Lytton, buller-lytton.com/2019. Emile Zola wandered the dank and soggy streets of a gloomy Parisian night, the injustice of the Dreyfus affair weighing on him like 1,000 baguettes, dreaming of some massage or therapy to relieve the tension and pain in his aching shoulders and back, when suddenly he thought of his Italian friends and their newly invented warm water bath with air jets, and he rapturously exclaimed in that oft-misquoted declaration, "Jacuzzi!"
Of course he did.
Robert R. Moore, North Falmouth, Massachusetts.
Well done,
Was
Robert.
that the winner?
Yep.
No, that's the winner. The grand prize.
Can I just explain to the listeners, because
Please.
some of them won't actually know. Bulwer-Lytton famously wrote a novel that began, "It was a dark and stormy night." And the Bulwer-Lytton competition has been set up in order for people to write the worst opening sentence of a novel that they conceivably can.
I should compete. My first attempts are
Hell
always
yeah.
awful.
The 2019 grand prize for the Bulwer-Lytton Fiction Contest, which is, by the way, local San Jose State Literature Department started it. Space Fleet Commander Brad sat in silence, surrounded by the slowly dissipating cloud of smoke, maintaining the same forlorn frown that had been fixed upon his face since he'd accidentally destroyed the phenomenon known as time 13 inches ago. Maxwell Archer, Mount Pleasant, Ontario, Canada. Thank you,
Very nice.
Mr. or Ms. Archer.
That's magnificent.
Thank you, Archer.
Thank you, Archer.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's cliche. There was even a book called Death by Cliche, which I thought was fabulous for gamer terms of how to, as you're writing a game, how to avoid writing two-dimensional bad guys, and how to write, shopkeepers that only have one purpose in life is to impart this information, but then have they're cardboard. And so how do you make rounded characters all the way through? And so as the character of Death by Cliche travels through, suddenly all of the NPCs he encounters for the first time encounter free will. Like the despotic ruler discovers that, well, if we put all of these slaves in the mines, then nobody will work the fields, so that makes no sense. And he suddenly tries to be a fairer, more decent ruler because the previous, what was written in the book just doesn't really work in terms of a... Yeah. And so, I mean, whether it's got to be world building or character building, you really need to stop and say, okay, if you're not going to have a character, it's not going to collapse sobbing in the middle of a large, unless somebody walks in and hands your beloved wife of 30 years has died and here's her pearls. What?
Or possibly here's her head.
Here's her head,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which even there's a movie where that happens actually, and the guy just, he goes all murderous rather than sobbing
because he's a guy.
Because he's a guy, and played by Brad Pitt,
who seldom sobs.
Right.
But no, basically, Jeannie, I think you just described the craft and art of writing.
Oh no.
It's about world building, it's about character building, and it's about language. And in all three of those, avoiding the cliche is simply part of the job, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's been the books that I've picked up and tried to read and just couldn't.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've been it's too much. We need
and to expound further, avoiding those cliches in all of those arenas requires effort.
Yes, it does.
So laziness will not be rewarded.
Right. So the definition of lazy writing, QED,
is following the tracks that have been so thoroughly stamped in beforehand.
Right.
Mark my footsteps, good my page.
It's like walking through the snow.
Yes, it is.
All right, we will put links to the stories and the interesting things and contests that we mentioned throughout this at our website, which is www.writersdrinkingcoffee.com. We are on Facebook and Twitter. We would be delighted if you guys would all take part of our next polls as we go out to find what you all think and noticed about different ideas. You've been listening to Writers Drinking Coffee, a labor of love and enthusiasm from your hosts. Our main web support magic is brought to you by Deirdre McGaffey-Schween, and our sound engineer and backup web spider is David Welsh. Our intro music is Pretty Maid Milking a Cow, and our exit music is Breakfast with a Morning Person, both by Michael Engberg. You can hear more from Michael Engberg on manyhatsmusic.com. Our podcast sponsor is Jackal Designs, enabling you all to buy awesome WDC swag, including the new Live at Mally's t-shirt.